Now that you understand the two paths a content creator should take, in this lesson, I'm going to introduce you to something very important. What a niche really is, the importance of defining your niche, and the characteristics needed to define a niche for your YouTube channel. So I'm here with this mind map. To start, let's understand what a niche really is. A niche is a specific area that brings together a group of people with common interests and needs. For example, someone might create a channel dedicated to topics like vegan cooking, makeup tutorials, fitness tips, financial education, or even specific video games. Each of these niches serves an audience of people looking for specialized content and relevant information on particular subjects. In other words, when we refer to the word niche, we're talking about a category of content that focuses on a group of people with common interests. We have niches for gaming content, history, movies and series, and so on. When you're thinking about becoming a content creator, whether on YouTube, blogs, Instagram, or numerous other social media platforms, one of the first questions you should ask yourself is, what niche? Or rather, what type of content do you aim to work with? If you create a profile and produce content without defining a niche before even starting, it will confuse the algorithm of your profile, limiting your growth. And Mateus, what are the advantages of defining a niche? I've outlined some advantages in the mind map to describe the benefits of defining a niche before you start producing content. The first advantage I've noted for you is greater authority and expertise. What does that mean, Mateus? By focusing on a niche that you enjoy and have knowledge about, you can become an expert in the subject. This not only increases your credibility, but also strengthens the trust of your audience. Over time, you can become a reference, and when people search for this type of information, they will find your content in that specific niche. In other words, this is one of the main advantages of defining a niche as a content creator, the likelihood of becoming an expert and further improving your credibility in a particular subject. Let's suppose, hypothetically, that you really like history, already have a deep knowledge of it, and decide to become a content creator on YouTube, Instagram, or numerous other social networks. You start posting your first videos, and over time you'll become an expert on the subject, further enhancing your credibility because you're working in a niche with which you're already familiar. Another advantage of defining a niche as a content creator is less competition. What do you mean, Matthias? I don't get it. Why would defining a niche result in less competition for me? Here's the thing, choosing a specific niche that you enjoy and have knowledge about allows you to become an authority in that subject. This reduces your competition because when you stand out in a specific field, the competition becomes less relevant. After all, those who provide high quality, unique content in a specific niche naturally stand out. In other words, by defining a niche that you like and already have some knowledge in, and by producing high quality content, the competition will be greatly minimized. You'll be delivering higher quality content, and any competition that arises will be quite irrelevant to you as a content creator. That's why I emphasize this point so much. One of the most important things you should do before even becoming a content creator is to ask yourself, what is the best niche in which I can excel? When you choose a specific niche that you already have some knowledge of and can dive deeper into, gaining credibility, it can provide you with less competition in content creation. The final advantage I've highlighted in defining a niche as a content creator is a stronger connection with your audience. By focusing on a specific niche that you enjoy, you'll establish authority in that niche and create a direct line of communication with your audience. This makes people more interested in your content, creating a sense of community, increasing engagement, and fostering follower loyalty. This is one of the significant advantages of defining a niche as a content creator, because by becoming an authority in a specific niche, you improve your connection with your audience and build loyalty among followers who will watch all your videos simply because you're a reference in that particular niche. So these are some advantages you'll have by defining a niche before starting the content creation process. But Matthias, how do I choose a niche? Scrolling down here, I've outlined some characteristics you can use as a basis for choosing a content niche to work in. One of the first ways is by selecting personal interests. How do you go about this process? I've noted 3 steps you can follow. The first is to make a list of your likes and interests. Write down what you enjoy doing, the types of content you consume the most on the internet, whether on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, or other social media platforms. This will help you identify niches where you have greater affinity. Working with a type of content that you like and are already comfortable with significantly increases the probability of becoming an authority in that particular area. That's why I recommend this approach of listing your personal interests and likes to potentially create content. Another way to choose a niche is by asking others. How do you do this in practice? Friends and family can give suggestions on types of content that suit you. They may notice skills or interests that you haven't recognized. This is interesting and can be a useful exercise before defining a niche. Ask people close to you who know you well, and they can suggest types of content you could work on. You can note down these suggestions even if you don't follow all of them, but this exercise, combined with the list of personal interests and likes, can be very helpful. To wrap up the topic of personal interests and preferences, the last approach I'd recommend for choosing a type of content is to reflect on your experiences. Areas where you've already had experience or intend to study can be promising niches to start as a content creator. Your personal experience can add a unique perspective to your content. This means you can start producing content in a niche where you're already an expert or in a niche you intend to delve into and explore. A practical example is a close friend who had an interest in finance and economics. He always worked in a different field and never really delved deeply into economics. But he started creating content based on the knowledge he had about finance and economics, and as he dug deeper into the subject, he gained credibility. He didn't initially know much about the topic in depth, but he started with what he knew. As he produced content, he continued to delve into the subject, further enhancing his authority and credibility in the niche. This is one way to choose a niche. Selecting interests, personal preferences, possible experiences you've had, and experiences you plan to have. Make a complete list of the niches you've identified and choose the one that's ideal for you. Another way to choose a niche is by identifying market trends. You can observe competitors by analyzing other content creators in niches you're interested in. This can provide insights and give you a sense of trends in that specific niche. Watching international content is also an interesting strategy because often trends in specific niches start in other countries and take time to reach your country. Exploring international content can give you a holistic view, or in other words, an out-of-the-box perspective, helping you anticipate trends that haven't yet arrived in your country. This happens frequently. Many niche and sub-niche models first emerge outside your country before reaching the national market. When you watch other content creators abroad, you can anticipate possible trends that might arrive here. An example of this is the type of react content or reaction videos. This style of content wasn't very popular here in my country, but was already quite common in other countries. However, in my country, this content gained popularity, especially during the 2020 pandemic, when the react content style expanded even more. This is an example of a content niche that started abroad and then gained momentum in the national market. By watching content from other countries, you can bring trends that are already popular there to your own country. Another practical example is the dropshipping market, which involves selling products without the need for inventory. This business model, along with the related content niche, started abroad. Imagine if you had already been studying the international market and knew about dropshipping becoming a pioneer in this subject in your country. That would be very beneficial for you, both in terms of authority and market opportunities. The last method I use to identify market trends and choose a niche is by analyzing hashtags. You can take your list of interests and personal preferences and search for hashtags in each corresponding niche to analyze metrics and gain insights not only about the niche as a whole, but also about sub-niches within that specific niche. When I talk about sub-niches, I'm referring to subcategories within a larger niche. For example, in the gaming niche, we have several sub-niches like game react videos, gameplay, game stories, game story summaries, among others. So, sub-niches are basically subcategories encompassed within a specific niche. But what are the characteristics you can use to define a niche and start producing content? There are a few characteristics I've outlined. The first is choosing personal interests, as I have already mentioned. In other words, choosing a niche that you enjoy and already have some knowledge about will allow you to produce content with greater affinity, which is crucial for success. One of the most important aspects to consider before defining a niche and starting to create content on YouTube, TikTok, or various other social media platforms is to choose a specific niche that you truly enjoy. After all, Working on something you love brings much more satisfaction and affinity. If you start producing content in a niche you're not really interested in, it's likely that you won't feel as motivated. But if you choose a niche that you genuinely like, your dedication will be much greater, which will be reflected in the quality of your content. This is exactly why it's essential to define a niche that you appreciate. Another important aspect when choosing a niche is to observe the hashtags related to that niche. Analyzing hashtags and the most popular videos within the niche helps you understand what is trending. When you search for hashtags in a niche that interests you, you can identify not only the most popular videos and trends, but also understand which content style is performing well and assess whether it's worth investing in that specific niche by also analyzing the level of competition. Another important characteristic in choosing a niche as a content creator is to create test videos. Before launching an official profile, validate the niche. Create parallel profiles to test your niche and videos, and publish these videos on these alternative profiles to validate both the niche and the content. Before launching your official profile, you can check whether the chosen niche is truly promising, as well as evaluate whether the content you're producing is relevant to the platform. Validation is optional depending on the person, niche, and video style. If the video is of good quality and ensures good retention, both initially and throughout the video, as well as good engagement, it indicates that it's suitable content for the platform. During testing, if your video has all these characteristics, it might even go viral on the test profile. If that happens, you might need to turn the test profile into an official one, which has happened to me a few times. I published some test videos on a profile, and at one point, one of those videos went viral. Within a week, it reached 100,000 views and kept growing until it hit 6 million views. That video was crucial in helping me monetize my profile, as it helped me reach the minimum number of followers and views required in the last 30 days. Initially, my intention was for that profile to be just a test, but with the video's success, I ended up turning it into my official profile. The last aspect, while not exactly a characteristic for defining a content niche, is a piece of advice. Be flexible and willing to adapt to the niche you choose. Your interests and the market can change, so it's important to always be open to adjusting your niche as needed. Strive to evolve and adapt to changes in the chosen niche, because otherwise, you might fall behind. I've seen cases of major YouTubers with millions of followers who didn't adapt to new trends and ended up losing relevance. Even with a large number of followers, their videos no longer get many views because they failed to adjust to the new market demands.